Glad you're still here. Thank you for staying with News Central. We all know that as AI technologies continue to advance, it is essential for Africa to take ownership of its AI future. At the Africa Soft Power Summit 2025 held in Nairobi in May, tech giants Google and Meta called for greater AI sovereignty in Africa, urging stakeholders to build data and technology systems that reflect the continent's languages, cultures, and priorities. Now, organizers of the summit announced that a post-event report will soon be published, capturing key insights and outlining new models for African innovation and creativity. With themes ranging from AI governance and digital inclusion to creative industry policy and gender equity, the summit demonstrated that Africa's future indeed lies not just in catching up, but in setting the pace. I want to have a conversation on AI sovereignty in Africa. And to help us with some perspective is Professor of Cybersecurity and IT Management, Executive Committee member, ISSG Information Security Specialist Group, Ojo Emmanuel-Ademola. Also here is founder and Chief Executive Officer of Qhala, joining us from India, Shikoh Gitau. Thank you both for giving us your time. I'll start with you. What does AI sovereignty mean in the African context?
Thank you so much. I'm actually today connecting from DC. I think we're always speaking when I'm in a different continent.
I think it's just an error from the producer. Thank you for the correction.
Okay. So AI sovereignty is like now the big thing. There's a lot of buzzwords around it, but what does it mean for Africa? Later this week, we are going to be releasing a paper that basically we are defining AI sovereignty as, for Africa specifically, as the ability to be able to shape the development, deployment, and governance of artificial intelligence technologies in ways that directly serve the continent's people, priorities, and values. And that is very, very important because when we hear about AI and AI sovereignty, there's a lot of conversation and buzzing that is going around it. But what does it mean for Africa? Are we shaping the development, deployment, and governance? Do we have infrastructure? Do we have the data sets? Do we have the talent? I think the last time we spoke, we talked about these five pillars that actually that form up the AI ecosystem. But are any of them in our hands? Last week, Kenya announced that it's repatriating data sets of health from the US because they've been living in the US. And once the USAID was shut down, the health sector basically grind to a halt because all our data was held in servers that are sitting in here in DC. So it is about that. And it's about being able to invent, build, steward, educate, learn, and own, and most importantly, influence how AI is being built for the African continent.
All right. Thank you for laying the basics for us. Something we did talk about it, and just to remind our viewers who followed that conversation, correct me if I'm wrong. You said and you also shared that document as well, and it's helped to remind that we have the AI sovereignty rests on 6 pillars: invent, build, steward, educate, own, and influence. I would like you to talk about that pillar in a bit, but let me come to Ojo and just ask him to talk about this fear that you alluded to, Shikoh alluded to, among people about AI, first off, coming to take over. And then there is, of course, those that don't really understand what AI is about. Basic education, as it were, is already a challenge for us here in Africa. So my question is, are we educating our people enough about AI to remove the fear and allow us to expand?
Speaking with Professor Ademola, the question is to my colleagues.
No, it's to you.
Speaking with Professor Ademola, do you want me to answer that question?
Yes. Professor Emmanuel-Ademola, yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Let me quickly add something about AI sovereignty. You are talking about control of deployment, control of and the governance side of things, which include innovation. And when we are talking about education side of it, we must, because we have the data set, we own the data in Africa. For example, our cultural intelligence, our ethnicity, how diverse we are. So we must build AI, we must train AI to reflect our culture, to reflect indigenous intelligence, so that we don't recolonize ourselves in the digital age. So when you're talking about education side now, you are talking about global partnership. Let our own AI, the AI in Africa context, the AI that we have used our data set to train, the AI we have developed and its governance in form of framework, let it be in the global platform, in the global market.
Okay, I think my question, sir, I get the point you're making.
Research and development.
Prof, I get the point you're making, but I was leaning more towards, you know, I mean, I am beginning to use AI a bit with the chat GTP and some other apps that we have on social media and all of that. But not everybody has this access. I'm asking you, for instance, you're domiciled in Nigeria, if I'm correct. Are we doing enough to educate people about the AI evolution that is sweeping across board?
Is the question to me again? I'm speaking to you from the UK, not from Nigeria.
Okay, okay.
I'm speaking to you from London. If you are talking about the level we are far from, you see, AI is about tools. AI is about technology, using machine learning apparatus to build, to train the system, to train the technology, to reflect your own intelligence, to reflect your own culture, to reflect your own language, and to do whatever you want it to do to meet your own framework. That's all about AI. Now, when you're talking about the education side in Nigeria, I've been saying it over the weeks, even before the conference you have in Kenya between May 21st to 25th, that we need to democratize education of AI to allay the fear. Let's adopt the bottom-top approach by having AI up in each local government, for example. You know, you have several AI all over, apart from the chatbot you have in Ghana, you have the DI's Word, you have in South Africa, you also have the pharmacy as well in Nigeria. Let's take it from local government. Let's have AI up in each local government of Federal Republic of Nigeria. We have 774 local government. Let's have AI training center in each of the local government.
All right.
And let's partner with university in the area of research and development.
Okay.
In order to democratize access to AI. So that's how we go about it, in form of collaboration. Let's have control. We have data everywhere. Let the data be available to train the AI.
Democratize access. I think that's something I picked from what you just said. Democratize access so it can be available for everyone. Shikoh, I want to come back to you. I would want you personally to talk about those pillars, but we're time constrained. I just looked at the time, and I want you to speak on other issues as well. So talk to us about how can Africa evolve from, we're talking about sovereignty now, how can we evolve from a passive consumer into an active architect of AI, perhaps crafting partnership on our own terms and influencing global norms to benefit Africa?
So thank you so much, and thank you so much, Professor, for being part of this conversation. So it starts again with that clear definition, both from a country point of view, but also from a regional point of view of what AI sovereignty actually mean. What is sovereign AI when it comes to Africa? Yeah. So number one, sovereign AI is it ownership? And I think I mentioned it's about being able to shape the deployment, design, development, and governance of AI. But that is very fluffy in terms of languaging, right? So that's why we came up with the 6 pillars I had mentioned earlier. It's invent, being able to develop foundational AI capabilities. And I mean, I would stretch it as much as saying being able to develop our own foundational AI models, right, from Africa. And it can be, it's a debate, should Africa develop one single model, or should we have regional models, or should we have country-specific model? The second one is include indigenous data sets. Yeah, in the invent part, we know that the data sets contribution of Africa, especially to the Gen AI, is very minimal. It's less than 2%. Is how do we do that? Yeah, nuanced algorithms, language models. We have more than 2,000 languages on the African continent. How is that being reflected and represented? Our diversity as a continent is going to be reduced to just English if we do not we are not sovereign enough. The second part is about building. Yeah, every time somebody talks about build, there's one HPC, high performance computer on the African continent in Morocco. Yeah, and you're not saying everybody should have one, but we should just actually start investing in this. The hardware ecosystem needs to actually work on the African continent. We should invest on open source. Yeah, and as the professor mentioned, we should invest in AI hubs. Yeah, to ensure that we are training and building on the African continent. Steward is a big one, yeah, and the word steward is very deliberate. It's about different stakeholders across the continent coming together to uphold the rights, mitigate the harms, and define Africa's contribution to what Africa defines as global AI ethics and standards. Yeah, not somebody else defining for us. So last year we were involved in something the UK was doing around doing a paper around AI ethics and AI trust, and we kept asking from an African perspective, what does ethics actually mean? What does trust? From whose point of view are we defining this? So we need to be part of that stewardship point of view, educate. And you did prompt the professor, how can this happen? Yeah, we should be able to build a talent ecosystem. There's a paper that came out showing that Africa is not contributing to the global AI development because you don't have any talent. We have a talent index. If you go to talent index, .ai, so just talentindex.ai, it shows, it's a very deliberate way of like measuring what type of talent we have on the African continent, and you will see it's very minimal. So we need to be very deliberate in building it. Yeah, and it doesn't have to have PhDs alone. It can start with children at nursery level. We saw both the US and China have announced that AI is part of the curriculum. What are we doing in Africa? We've not seen such a bold declaration from African countries. We declare the AI declaration on Africa does call it out, but we need to be that bold to do it. But also it goes beyond the educational setting. It's things like Zindi, yeah, Data Science Nigeria, the AI Kenya, all this community-based learning that are happening across the continent is very important. The fifth one is own. We need to own our own data systems. As I mentioned earlier, Kenya is trying to repatriate all our data back from DC to Nairobi. I mean, it should not have happened in the first place. We should have localized language storage and data centers. We should be able to label them,
Shikoh,
to monetize.
Sorry to interrupt. As you're speaking, I just got a thought. I don't know if it is out of context, but when you talk about data, repatriating data, aren't we already selling our data all over the place? Is that something we can own again?
Yes, and that is the two things. There is owning our data that we can monetize, and that's what I was talking about, creating a monetization pathways of our own data from our own community. And in this case, where our data we did not even know was being stored in DC in the first place, because somebody else had paid for the systems, the storage. It was already, we don't have the right, the sovereignty. The word sovereignty comes in to actually define the destiny of our own data. That is where sovereignty comes in. But when we have our own data, we can monetize and sell it, which are two different conversations, right?
All right.
And finally is influence. So this week in DC, we are having the African AI Village, similar to what we had in France, I think the first conversation we had with you. And this is to make sure that we are shaping conversations on AI at a global stage. Yes, we can talk about sovereignty and limit ourselves to the borders of Africa, but the big conversations and the future of AI is not being shaped just in Africa. It's being shaped in different locations. And that's why Africa has to be present in all of these conversations. And that for me is essential in influencing. So like here in DC, when they're talking about AI,
Shikoh, I'm sorry to interject. We're really at time constraints, so I'd like to bring in the professor, to speak a little more on, what are some potential applications of AI in Africa that can drive economic growth? Shikoh has talked about, the pillars, what we need to get our sovereignty. But what are the potentials here? Not only economic growth, but improve healthcare and enhance education.
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. But let me clarify something about data dependency. At the moment, the AI available across Africa, Tunisia, South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, we are too reliant on foreign data. So we must now begin to train our AI with our own data. And again, the issue of cultural misalignment. So AI system not reflecting African value and priorities. That's an issue. Otherwise, you will continue to recolonize our local intelligence and cultural ability. And we also need to talk about regulatory gaps. When we fill those gaps, then there's opportunity to create jobs. Economic side of it will come to light. We now localize our data control. We now emphasize the importance of data localization to ensure data sovereignty. There must be data sovereignty first in order to gain access and to train the AI for economic purposes. Let's talk about data sovereignty first. And from there, we go also on to cultural integration, cultural intelligence, there must be sovereignty in this area as well. You see, we must begin to advocate for AI systems that incorporate African, languages, as my colleague said there. When you do that, you begin to improve the financial.
So
for example, let me give you the pharmacy initiative AI in Nigeria there. I think NAFDAC is also investing on that. That can create multiple of jobs.
But if I understand what you're saying, we need to get our basics right, create the right environment before we begin to, explore the opportunities. Okay, quickly, talk to us about, obviously we need to get things right, but we're not getting them. So what are some of these challenges that it's facing AI adoption in Africa, and how can we begin to address them? Quickly, sir.
Now, we are talking about the role of languages, the data set, and indigenous knowledge. Let's be coherent in this first. Let's own the data. Let's own the data set. The data you use to train AI must be your own data. Otherwise, there is what we call data colonization or data enslavement. That is, what you're supposed to put in the market, you are not putting it in the market. So what is the solution to that? Let's invest in local infrastructure by developing our own local data center. In the last few weeks, China is already putting their own data center because of what is happening in America. They are putting their own data center in the space. But we don't need to put our own data center in the space for now. Let's put it in the old local government. That's my advocacy.
All right.
So that by
Prof, again, I have to interject and come to Shikoh quickly. We have like less than 5 minutes. What are some of the key ethical considerations for AI development in Africa that we need to consider, especially when we're talking about deploying it across board?
Yeah. Okay.
You have to go back to defining ethics, whose ethics, and what does that actually mean from a global definition and African definition. So when it comes to ethics, I feel like the most important one is how are we utilizing data? Whose data are we utilizing? Do they know that we have access to their data? You mentioned earlier this whole Kenya, USA, and I'm sure it's across the continent, it's not just Kenya. Kenya is the one that has just come up and talked about it. Is whose data has been training this? Yeah, ethics is whose culture is being perpetuated by the AI models, whose belief systems are being perpetuated when we're thinking about this. Those cultural nuances that the Prof was talking about, cultural intelligence, whose culture is it being embedded on that? So that for me is important. And how do we protect ourselves around it is, again, that stewardship piece, being able to govern our AI using a stewardness from the continent, yeah, because otherwise people will dictate what these ethics look like for us, and making sure that it's not causing harm. I always say it's creating products that don't cause harm to humanity and human dignity, what is important. But other things are up there for definition and interpretation. And I really want us to just absorb what the world is talking about without those nuances of being an African person. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In 30 seconds, if you can, Prof, I'd like you to speak on that as well. The ethical considerations.
Consideration is very simple. Let's begin to use our own data. When you have data sovereignty, then the ethical side of development becomes easier. Then we can have AI that reflects our priorities, our values, and at the same time, we can begin to talk about localizing our data ethically, responsibly, so that the issue of AI will not go out of hand. Then the issue of governance as well. Ethical governance of the AI infrastructure, getting the people using the machine learning to understand it from African perspective, so that we can deploy it from African perspective. It's more of cultural integration also in deploying ethically.
There is never enough time. Shikoh, you can attest to this. The last time we also had to round up. I still had so many questions. I'm hoping we can revisit this conversation as well, Prof, some other time. Thank you so much for the insights you've provided today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. And that is our conversation for today. There is a lot of fear, skepticism, and ignorance around AI, but the truth remains ignorance is no excuse for staying behind. So if you're watching today, take a moment, learn what you can about AI and what its place will be in our collective future. And that way, you won't be taken by surprise. And the fear, when you face fear head on, its power over you reduces. Thank you for giving us your time.